All right, today we are sitting here with Mrs. Claus as part of our Kids Weekly interview. So thank you, Mrs. Claus, for sitting down with us today. The children have a question for you here, and the first question that they would like to ask you is, how did you meet Santa Claus in the first place?
Well, that's a very funny story. He came down my chimney one Christmas and totally surprised me because I was not asleep like I was supposed to, but he left me a note before he disappeared so that we could get in contact. It was love at first sight.
Wow, that seems to have worked out pretty well.
It has.
Today we are sitting here with Mrs. Claus. Thank you, Mrs. Claus, for sitting down with the interview team here at Kids Weekly. We have a question for you here from the kids today.
Okay.
They would like to know how you met Santa Claus.
Oh, well, that's such a funny story. He came down my chimney one Christmas and surprised me. I was supposed to be asleep and I wasn't. And, you know, it was love at first sight.
Wow.
And then he disappeared. But I met up with him later. He left me a note.
That was very nice of him. Worked out well, didn't it?
It did work out well.
All right, question number 2 we have, Mrs. Claus, is how did Santa Claus propose?
Well, he took me on this wildly romantic sleigh ride to the South Pole, and we had hot cocoa, and he had this gorgeous little ring in a box.
Any penguins around?
There were. Only witnesses.
Only witnesses. Moving on, Mrs. Claus. Question number 3. Do you and Santa Claus have any children?
Well, we do. We have some of our own, but we have like hundreds of these little elf people that just I claim as my own.
So you have a pretty large family.
It's a very large family.
All right. Many of the children felt, Mrs. Claus, that you probably don't do anything during the Christmas season. So what they would, at least for me, myself, I'd like to know, what do you actually do during the holiday season or leading up to Christmas?
I am very busy. These children need to know I am very busy. I design the wrapping paper. I match all those little pretty bows with the paper and it goes with the gifts just right. And then I bake thousands of cookies. And there's a few trees here and there that I decorate.
Wow.
And I have to feed the elves.
That's a pretty busy schedule, I'd say. They're a
It's
little
very
off
busy.
base on that one, weren't they?
They were very off
That's one
base.
strike against them for
I'm
Christmas
very
next
busy.
year.
Well,
Next question, Mrs. Claus, is what happens in the off season, and if there is even an off season?
well, the off season is very short because, you come back from Christmas and the whole year starts all over again because it takes a lot of time to get all those toys ready. But there is a short one, and we usually take a little vacation.
That sounds relaxing.
Mostly.
Good. All right, so Mrs. Claus, you brought up vacations or getting away. Do you and Mr. Santa Claus have a favorite holiday or vacation spot after the holidays, or?
Oh, we do. Santa has to shave his beard, though, in order for us to get
sure.
away, because otherwise he's too recognizable. But we do like to go south to the Caribbean, have a little cruise.
Probably a lot of
Where it's warm.
sunscreening too, huh? For Santa.
Yes, we're not
Yeah,
used to the warmth, but it feels very nice for just a short period of
I
time.
bet it does. All right, a tough question here, Mrs. Claus, is how do you feel about your husband Santa being gone, Christmas Eve into Christmas?
Well, it's okay. I mean, he's doing his job, and that's fine. And after all, I've worked hard too, and I get to put my feet up by the fireplace and just have my own hot cocoa and read a book or whatever I want to do, and I don't have to worry about what he's doing because I know he's out giving all the children their gifts. So it's okay. The elves might miss him more than I do.
All right, well, Mrs. Claus, last question that the children have here. If you could fire one of the elves, which one would it be?
Well, I did fire one. And then I found out he wasn't really an elf after all. It was Grumpy, snuck in. He was that dwarf, snuck in with the elves, was just not very cheerful. I fired him, and then I found out he was just an imposter. But of the regular elves, no, they're all wonderful.
So how'd you find that out? Do you have like private investigators running around up there, or?
Yeah, and it was the ears weren't quite right. They weren't quite
Kind of a dead
quite
giveaway.
Right. Yeah, a dead giveaway.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mrs. Claus, for sitting down with us today for this interview. I'm sure the children enjoyed it, and hopefully you did as well.
I did. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.